The latest reports about Minnesota Vikings rookie quarterback J.J. McCarthy are getting juicier and juicier by the minute. This latest report comes courtesy of Dan Graziano. What did I say? Dan Graziano of ESPN, the Ocho. But first, this take is presented by Hokeland Farm. Contact Hokeland Farm and get the best rotationally grazed 100% grass-fed beef. You see that picture right there? That's Hokeland Farm steak. Plus, you get chuck roast, you get hamburger meat, you get it all with Hokeland Farm. Plus, this is the highest quality beef you can get, and it's cheaper than grocery store meat. So contact Hokeland Farm at 952-491-1541. That's 952-491-1541 and get 20% off your first order by mentioning the Minnesota Tim podcast. Get great beef in your freezers today. Okay, so Dan Graziano, he had this to say. Feast your ears and eyes on this.
The Vikings selected J.J. McCarthy. They have a very detailed and specific developmental plan tailored to J.J. McCarthy. They actually made one for several different quarterbacks because they didn't know which one they were going to draft. The way it works is if McCarthy hits certain benchmarks by certain dates, sure, he could be the week one starter. But if not, they're happy to go with Sam Darnold until J.J. McCarthy is ready. So watch J.J. McCarthy throughout camp in the preseason, see how he's advancing through that program that they have set up just for him. And then finally,
so he's indicating and reporting that the Minnesota Vikings could start rookie quarterback J.J. McCarthy in week one. And I believe him. There's no doubting this report that the Minnesota Vikings have certain benchmarks needed. I believe that's 100% factual. The problem that I have isn't with the report. The problem that I have is with the benchmark the Minnesota Vikings have for him. Not that I have a problem with the benchmark, but what needs to be analyzed is what the benchmark is. I believe the Minnesota Vikings have a benchmark for him. I believe it's right for the Minnesota Vikings to have a benchmark for him. But what needs to be discussed is what the benchmark is. My question for you is this. The Minnesota Vikings have a very difficult first 5 weeks of the season. Some of those matchups I know include the Giants, the 49ers, the Packers, the Houston Texans, and I think the New York Jets. Do you really want J.J. McCarthy, even if he's hit that certain benchmark, to go out and play against those 5 teams in his first 5 NFL starts? Well, maybe it'll give him confidence, or maybe his confidence will be completely shaken because you're arguably playing against 2 of the top 5 Super Bowl contenders going into next season with the 49ers and Houston Texans on your schedule early. It makes no sense for the Vikings to start J.J. McCarthy. It's not like he's Michael Penix Jr., where he's 24 years old and he played all these years at college and, there's not a whole lot of time. Remember, was there a guy named Brandon Whedon? I think that's what his name was. Drafted by the Cleveland Browns. He's like 27 years old when he was drafted. He played for Oklahoma City. He was like the Red Rocket. He was like Adam Dalton before Adam Dalton. And he was a massive bust by the Cleveland Browns. I mean, who wasn't a massive bust by the Cleveland Browns? But that's a situation where, okay, this guy's got to start right away. He's like 27 years old. There's not time. There's no time to develop him. He's got to come in and be ready to play. J.J. McCarthy's only 21. And he doesn't need to start right away. And the Minnesota Vikings front office and their organization understands that. J.J. McCarthy has a lot to work on The Minnesota Vikings coaching staff has been consistent on that all offseason. And maybe they're just trying to protect the fan base and protect J.J. McCarthy and protect themselves by the comments to the media about how, his footwork and his, understanding defensive reads. And I get it from every single perspective, but there still has to be some truth to it. We've seen insiders like Kevin Seifert and Alec Lewis report that all offseason that J.J. McCarthy needs a lot of work on his footwork, on his drop back, on certain things like that. So one training camp, one preseason is going to be enough to fix that? I don't necessarily think so. And I don't think the Minnesota Vikings want to rush anything at all. The Minnesota Vikings are going to wait as long as necessary until they feel 110% confident that J.J. McCarthy can go out on the field and be a starter and be successful and take the Minnesota Vikings to new heights. I don't think they're going to rush anything, and they've said that all offseason. They've been consistent on it all offseason because what's the rush? Why rush something, especially when you have a guy like Sam Darnold who's bounced around but is looking for a fresh start, has a fresh start, and has great weapons around him. I'm not believing the Minnesota Vikings when they say he could start week 1. I believe that they have a benchmark for him. I believe they should have a benchmark for him, but I don't believe that benchmark means he could start week 1. I think it's impossible for that to happen. Thank you for watching this episode. If you're watching, please hit that subscribe button right there. And if you're listening, please rate, review, and follow the show wherever you're listening to this show. Remember, Hoagland Farm, 952-491-1541.